Hi there. My name is Dave Seaweed, and I'm the Indigenous Coordinator at Douglas College. I am from the Kwakiutl Nation, born and raised in East Vancouver. My father and his father before him are from Port Hardy in Alert Bay. I would like to acknowledge that I'm sharing with you today on the Kakite First Nation, which is the newest Minster band, and thank Chief Rhonda Larrabee for supporting our work at Douglas College. As is my understanding, the Word Vancouver Festival spread throughout the Lower Mainland and Fraser Valley and online throughout North America and beyond. I would also acknowledge the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Coquitlam nations. We acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, where we live, we learn, we play, and we do our work. 95% of British Columbia, including Vancouver, is on unceded traditional First Nations territory. Unceded means that First Nations people never ceded or legally signed away their lands or gave them away to the Crown or to Canada. I have been asked why we acknowledge First Nations territory. Many organizations, governments, and school districts have adopted the practice of acknowledging traditional territories as a way to honor and show respect to the Aboriginal inhabitants of this land, the First Peoples. This practice enables wider municipal communities to share in Aboriginal cultures and leads to better relationships and understandings. Observing this practice connects participants with the traditional territory and provides a welcoming atmosphere to the land where people are gathering. We believe that acknowledging territory is a positive step towards reconciliation, which involves a commitment to learning about and understanding the real history of Canada's Aboriginal peoples and taking responsibility for reconciliation with Aboriginal peoples in Canada. The process of reconciliation is tied to the federal government's relationship with Indigenous peoples. The term has come to describe attempts made by individuals and institutions to raise awareness about colonization and its ongoing effects on Indigenous peoples. I would encourage you all, young and old, to do a little research about where you live, work, or go to school, and in turn, find out what First Nations territory you are on so you can acknowledge when asked or for sharing at events. I wanted to conclude by mentioning the September 30th national holiday that began last year as National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September 30th. In First Nations communities, we have been honoring Orange Shirt Day since 2013. The origins for the day come from a story about Phyllis Webstad's experience. She went to the mission for one school year in 73 and 74. She had just turned 6 years old and lived with her grandmother on the Dog Creek Reserve. They never had very much money, but somehow her grandmother managed to buy her a new outfit to go to the mission school. She remembers going to the store, picking out a shiny orange shirt. It had string laced up in front and was so bright and exciting, just like she felt to be going on to school. When she got to the mission, they took away her clothes, including the orange shirt. She never wore it again. She didn't understand why they wouldn't give it back to her. The color orange has always reminded her of that and how her feelings didn't matter, how no one cared, and how she felt like she was worth nothing. All of the little children were crying and nobody cared. We now wear orange shirts that always say, "Every child matters." I would encourage you all to wear orange shirts on September 30th and become an ally and partner for First Nations folks dealing with the residential school findings. I'm wishing you all the best during your time with Word Vancouver 2022. Stay strong and stay safe. Thank you.
Am I up? Hey, good morning. My name is Joseph Dandurand. I'm from Kwantlen First Nation, and I've been honored with being asked to be the host of this wonderful moment in time. And I just have a few things I need to read for you, so bear with me. And here we go. Word Vancouver would like to take a moment to thank our generous donors and sponsors. We would like to give a special thank you to SFU and the Writers Studio for this wonderful space and their continued generous support of Word Vancouver, the Canada Arts Council, the Canada Book Fund, the Canada Heritage Fund, Canada Periodical Fund, the BC Arts Council, BC Gaming, Creative BC, the City of Vancouver, DBVIA, the Joseph Wask Family Foundation, the Harbour Foundation, the BC and Yukon Book Prizes, the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, CWILL, Pace and Associates, the Crime Writers Association, the Federation of BC Writers, the Surrey Library, the Vancouver Public Library, the League of Canadian Poets, the Writers Union of Canada, the Vines Festival, and many more. For a full list of our partners, please visit our website. Without you, this free festival could not happen. If you haven't already, please consider making a donation via our website. Without you, this free festival could not happen. If you haven't already, please consider making a donation via the link in the chat. Now I'd like to introduce my two favorite gentlemen in the whole world. First off, we have Roy Henry Vickers, who is a renowned carver, painter, printmaker, and storyteller of the Shimshan, Haida, and Heiltsuk ancestry. He is the illustrator and co-author with Robert Budd of Harbour Publishing's acclaimed children's First West Coast book series and Northwest Coast Legend series. Also, we have my good friend, who I just met like 30 seconds ago, but he's my good friend. Please welcome Robert Lucky Budd, who is a Canadian author, oral historian, and radio host. He is known for his books based upon the stories of British Columbia's pioneers, as well as his collaborations with artist Roy Henry Vickers. Please welcome these two great. Oh, Roy's crying, so I must have hit it. Welcome, and honored for you guys to host, me to host. You're the most. So please begin at your anytime. Right. Yeah, go ahead.
Age before beauty, I guess, Lucky?
Yeah, okay, go for it, buddy.
Well, I'm coming to you this morning, very excited to be talking about books, especially Indigenous books that share our knowledge with the world. I'm coming to you from the banks of the beautiful Skeena River in Gitxsan country in northern British Columbia, in between two villages, the village of Kispiox and the village of Glenbow. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm also very thrilled to be here today. I am coming to you from Lekwungen territory in Victoria, British Columbia, and it is a gorgeous day, and it's always a fun time to be talking about books. And Joseph, you're my good friend too. It's really nice to meet you. We're glad you're here with us today. Yeah. And it's really exciting for me. I'm sure Roy feels the same way, to be able to spend a little bit of time and talk about A is for Anemone and our other books. And there you go. And one of the reasons why it's so much fun talking about these little board books is because, in a way, Roy, we don't do it very often. We've spent so much time talking about the other book series that we've done, the Northwest Coast Legend series books, like these, and of course, our incredibly fun and important book, Voices from the Skeena. So it's nice to spend a little bit of time on board books.
It is. And I just drove that beautiful drive from Prince Rupert up to Hazelton here, all the way along the banks of the Skeena River. And it was a beautiful, beautiful day. Sunshine, leaves changing, the last day of summer. Yeah. So let's talk about.
Let's do it. So I think a really good way for us to start talking about the board books. A is for Anemone was actually the 5th book in a series. We had done these 4 books, if you can see, starting with Hello Humpback, which came out Oh, geez, it's tough when you look into a camera here. Hello Humpback, which started in 2017, and then that moved into One Eagle Soaring.
Nice.
And then Sockeye Silver Saltchuck Blue and Raven Squawk, there we go, Orca Squeak. And
Nice.
once those were all completed, the idea for A is for Anemone came next, which is a little bit of a different size and shape than the other books. And I just love the story of how that first board book started. Do you remember anything about that, Roy?
Oh no, my old.
All right, that's what he's got me for. So
Yeah.
I was visiting Roy on his gorgeous property up on the Skeena River in 2016 with my children, Levi and Emma, who at the time were 5 and 3. And both of our mutual, very, very close friends, Tizia and Servas, were also up on the property with their little child at the time. They only had one, a little guy named Dali. And we, Roy, Tizia, and myself, were standing on his deck looking over the river, and a huge eagle came, as I'm sure he sees almost every day, over the river and landed in a nest. And our children were playing on the grass underneath. And Tizia said, "That's what I need. I need a book that can describe what we just saw to my 1-year-old." And I looked at Roy and I said, "We can do that." And that was the genesis of this book series, and that started with Hello Humpback.
Wow.
Just that spark of an idea of this is something that we could do. Well, we can do that. And that was literally in August of 2016. This book was released in March or April of 2017. It was just like,
wow,
incredible. Yeah.
And that's how it started. Do you remember anything else about that, Roy?
No, I don't. I just remember the excitement of it. And for me, the thoughts were about these will reach children, many who can't even speak yet. And yet they're at a very formative time in their lives. I was taught by psychologists that from the time you can listen and hear in your mother's womb until you can speak a language, during that time when you can't speak or understand words that are spoken, you learn more than you comprehend it and feel it more than you will ever learn for the rest of your life. So I thought, wow, this is so exciting to be able to bring images forward and sounds forward to little children. And that's I remember that feeling.
Totally. And we just try to pack in as much goodness and as much learning and knowledge as we can into all these books. And the fact that Roy's art has so many layers of meaning. I mean, we could literally go even into one of these books, any random page, and there are so many stories that come with literally every single image. And the fact that Harbour Publishing, you can see on this salmon on this page, packs in so much tactile beauty into their production of these books. It's like we have the genesis of an idea, then we have Roy's art, and then we have the execution, which produces these books that are just so far-reaching and incredible, really. For me, the hardest part of the books is coming up with the song. Roy and I are both musicians. When we get together, we pull out our guitars and we start to play. So for Hello Humpback, in order to start working on the writing, I came up with a melody. Da 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 da. Then it's a matter of plugging in the words and working with Roy for the art and then watching him take it and produce something just so unbelievably incredible. I believe I did 11 between Roy and I think we did 11 drafts, and it's only 40 words.
Wow.
So that was right. So the idea that led to A is for Anemone, as far as I remember, is we started with Hello Humpback, which was first Words of the West Coast, which was followed by One Eagle Soaring, which is a counting book, numbers. So we go from words into numbers. One eagle soaring high, two moose wander by, all the way up to 10. Then we took that idea and we worked on colors of the West Coast. So Roy could really talk about this, but we tried to make it a seasonal to actually, as we said, like pack in the knowledge as much as we could. So throughout the seasons, what do we see? So the first few images, would be winter, and then we move into spring, and then the colors of, and then we move into summer, and then eventually fall with the rains and winter. So
Northern
try to
Lights.
pack in as much. Now, when it comes to colors, Roy, I know you have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, when I was a kid growing up, I always liked to draw. It was always pencil and paper. And when I got to high school, art was my favorite subject. And when I left high school, I was going to be a Royal Canadian Monopolice. I wanted to be a peacekeeper. And it was probably some of the stories of what our families went through with police. So I wanted to be a different kind of a peacekeeper who loved people instead of taking them away from families. And when I applied to go into the RCMP, I had to go through a medical. I was 20 years old and in really good shape. So I thought, oh, this is going to be a breeze. And I got to the part where they're checking your eyesight. I knew my eyesight was really good. And then we got to a part where they had all these circles on the screen with a bunch of colored dots in them, and you had to pick out a number which was slightly different colors. I couldn't see any numbers. So I failed my medical because I'm partially colorblind. And when I went and told my art teacher about this, he said, aha, that's why your colors are so strong. You paint what you see. That was easy. So he said, yeah, there you go. That takes something that people would say was, what's the word, Lucky?
Maybe a disability or
disability
sure.
into a very, very positive thing.
And it allows him to come up with a color scheme that is so rich and so bold and so beautiful.
It's truly beautiful.
Yeah, and the way that I think, Roy, you explained it to me, which really was poignant for me, was if people who are not colorblind have a palette, let's say, of 20,000 colors, your palette is probably closer to 12, but they're rich and they're powerful. You know? Doesn't mean you can't see, it's just a different palette.
Yeah, I paint what I see.
So when we were working on this book, I was joking with Roy, we should either get all the colors wrong or we should just make every color like gray or orange, you know what I mean? You know, like salt chuck blue, except it would be purple or anyway. You're kind of joking around about that. But it's been such an incredible thing to watch Roy create this art and step a little bit out of his comfort zone. For example, we're seeing a lot of green in his art. There's a beautiful, beautiful image that he made in our book, Cloudwalker, where Cloudwalker swims underneath these swans, and the entire image is green. You can see Cloudwalker underneath here, swimming underneath the swans. And as someone who knows and loves Roy and has heard so many of his stories, it was such a bold choice for him to use green as the primary color in his piece, because it's actually, other than trees, I would say, Roy, it's a color palette that much of your art over the last 50 years just hasn't really played with, as far as like other than trees, really.
That's right. I was always uncomfortable with green. Well, I was uncomfortable with trying to use any colors when I first began. And when I first got serious about art, it was always about traditional Northwest Coast art from my ancestors. And the colors are black and red mostly. And I can see those pretty easy. So it was a series of paintings that I did spring, summer, fall, and winter. And I knew that summer had to be a sunset, and I was afraid of trying to do a sunset because I knew I was colorblind. So I did all three, and then I came to West Coast sunset, a canoe etched against the sunset in the background. And I can see red, I can see orange, I can see yellow, and light blue and darker blues. However, when I used to play snooker, a game where there's a colored balls and then a whole bunch of red balls, there's one ball I could never see, and that was the brown ball. I'd have to ask my opponent, where's the brown ball on the table? So I knew when it came to doing color that I didn't know. And finally, what came to me was just paint what you see, Roy. Boom, it worked. It's always worked. And kids love the strong colors. I think that's mostly what they respond to. And Hello Humpback, when that book was done, some friends of ours had a little girl who hadn't learned to crawl yet. And they took the book and they put it on the floor. And this little girl crawled 5 feet just to get her hands on that book. And that's the greatest thing I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, Roy called me and was like, "You're not going to believe what just happened." Yeah, I mean, that, it's funny because when Roy and I work on these things and he's in his studio up on the Skeena River and I'm down here, working from my little studio, and we just kind of work away and we have a lot of fun doing it. But when he calls me with a story like that, you get to see the resonance of the work, and that's really what it's all about. So
I know
now.
Sorry, I know now how to beat Roy at snooker.
Yeah.
That's
all brown balls.
Yeah, it's right in the corner there, the red one. I just had a question.
Sure.
I don't know if I'm the only one as a writer or storyteller, as an artist. If you guys also, if throughout the years of creating, do you store images like I do? Like we're shown things, we're all shown different things. Like the other day I saw these two blackbirds just squawking at each other, and I store that in my head, and then it'll come out either in one of my poems or my stories or my plays. And I was just wondering if you did that too, Roy. If you must see so much outside your window.
Well, that leads to me to another story. To answer your question quickly, no, I don't store things. However, I observe a lot when I'm in nature. And I got to share this story with you. I'm with my grandpa in a rowboat, and we're rowing down the inlet in my village of Kitkatla, and we're towing 2 big logs. And Grandpa would say to me, "What do you see out there?" And so I'd look out and I'd say, "Oh, well, I see the ocean and the hills and trees and the sky." And I'd look at him and he'd do this. "Why don't you look again?" So I'd look again and I'm going, well, what didn't I see? Oh, there's clouds in the sky and they're moving on a west wind, so it's going to be nice weather. And there's some nice wood on the beach over there we could go and get on another high tide. Oh, and the tide's running out and we're going with the tide. And I look back at Grandpa and he just big smile on his face. Now you see.
Wow.
And the other thing that hit me from that was to look is like we're spectators. So we're looking, you're wearing spectacles. So respect is to look again. So when my grandpa said, "Look again," I realized at this age, he was teaching me to respect the beauty of nature and to look with more aware eyes to see what you can see. And so when I do that, I do it all of the time. It's the way I live now. What happens in my mind is those images, they just go into your memory, right, Joe? And we'll be working on something, and the reason this magic of creativity happens is because one little word from someone like Titia will just boom, blow up all of these images coming through my mind. So it's our memory. It's what we recollect from things that are collected there, I guess. So yeah, in a way, it's like storing them, only it's not a conscious thing. Yeah.
It's
a great question. I have a lot of fun working with Roy because I feel like part of my job and part of the gift of our creativity together is that we come up with ideas and he has to unlock things. So for example, we were working on this part once again in our book Cloudwalker, and there's a moment where Cloudwalker is falling through a rainbow before he lands on the clouds. And Roy, when we were talking about this, I said, do you have an image for that? And all of a sudden he was hit with, back in the I think it was the 70s. I think he said 70s. Back in the 1970s, I was on an airplane and I looked down, and on the clouds was a rainbow, but because we were above, I don't know exactly how you describe it, because we were above the prism, it was a circle. When you're up in the sky, it's not a rainbow that's only half, it's a circle. So then he was able to unlock that. And when he created this image for Cloudwalker falling through the rainbow, it was inspired by an unlocked memory of an airplane in the center of the rainbow. And it's like those sorts of things happen all the time. So my experience with Roy is that he doesn't store them on paper, he stores them as memories. And if we jog things the right way, often he'll just be, oh yeah, no, I know exactly what I'm doing. I just ask him for the story. Well, how did you come up with that? Or sometimes it needs a little nudge, like he was saying, and it's unlocked. So yeah, I like how you just phrased that though, Roy. That was really, really awesome. Like, what did you say when you store something, when you recollect, you're collecting?
Recollect.
I like that. I've heard the respect, but the recollect, that's a good one.
I never heard that till this morning either.
Nice. Like that. So moving along in the board book series, after the third book, we had a really creative idea, which was incredibly exciting, which was the idea to do the fourth book, which was Raven Squawk, Orca Squeak. And why this book is so exciting is because it's about sounds of the coast. We've done words, numbers, colors, but sounds play such a huge part. And it was incredibly fun to come up with writing a book based on onomatopoeias. Like, what do you hear? Skaters glide, swish, scrape, swoosh, fire crackles. Like, these are the emotive onomatopoeia words. And to come up with an idea to use, what do we hear? Well, cedars rustle, murmur, creak. What sound does a paddle make? I remember having this conversation with Roy. What sound does a paddle make? You were like, swoosh. It's like, oh yeah, okay, there we go. And coming up with the rhyme scheme for that was incredibly fun, and just what a creative, fun way to work on a project together, thinking about sounds. So we've really pushed each other and been pushed to do this. I loved working on this book. I thought it was so cool.
Ski.
Yes. That's right. At the very, very end, Roy and I were left, especially Roy, with bird sounds. Well, there's so many different ones. Well, how do we pack in as much as we can? Well, he created this gorgeous image of, just being out there, right? This is the sound that the wolf makes. This is the grouse. This is the cubs. These are all the birds.
Yeah, lots of fun.
Oh my God!
And also, what that reminded me of was our language is formed over thousands of years by the environment. And just a second, I went ski. Well, that's our Tsimshian name for eagle. And there is no interpretation. It's onomatopoeia.
Incredible. And so then once that was all said and done, the idea to then, which brings us to A is for Anemone, the book that we are here to talk about today, was a natural progression of all of those things. And the great thing about this is what a learning opportunity. I, until Roy taught me repeatedly, mispronounced the word anemone. It was anemone. And he was like, no, it's any money. And I thought, how many people out there, kids especially, are finally going to grow up knowing how to pronounce this word? And we had fun with it. There's no descriptions of how to pronounce the words in the book. So on the very back cover, we came up with, says it, can you say, and right there, can you say anemone? Anemone? Because it was like an opportunity to actually, if kids are going to be picking this up for the rest of their lives, they're going to pronounce it properly. How do we do that? It was like a little that we were able to sneak in there.
Kids will be correcting elders going, oh no, it's not an anemone. What did you say?
Yeah.
Anemone.
Anemone, it's anemone.
Yeah,
I can hear. Well, I've already heard it. I've already heard my children correcting older people.
It's hilarious, So that was the low-hanging fruit as to why this book was so going to be really, really fun to work on. Because right off the bat, it's like, how do we teach people how to say this word that so many people correct, don't do properly, don't say properly. And then it was just a matter of going through and finding this beautiful artwork. Roy in 1980, I believe it was 82, came up with this gorgeous design for a lighthouse. And who would have thought that all these years later, it would find its way onto the cover of a kid's book? And this image, was a limited edition of what, like 50 at the time?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Never been in any books. It's never been anywhere. And all of a sudden, it's like we get to uncover and bring out these images. He produced a lot of new art for the book, but going back and be able to be like, hey, that lighthouse image? This is a perfect opportunity. And it was like a no-brainer for the cover. Go ahead.
And this, when we got to X, the only X that I knew was xylophone. Oh man, how are we going to do X? And then as soon as I asked that question, boom, oh, Xien. The old way of spelling this word is Xsien, Xien. And that's the name of the Skeena River. Gitxien, I said I'm speaking from Gitxien country. Well, Xien is the river and Git is people. So Gitxien are all of the people who are born on the banks of this Skeena River. So that's how we got Xien.
And it was an easy opportunity to teach with very simple language. Xien, the Skeena, is a mighty river. So what is Xien? The Skeena. What is that? A mighty river. It's like it just all came together very, very. That was a lovely one. That was a really, again, just an opportunity to teach. It's not, it's nothing that we could really pass up. And our criteria for doing the book is, well, what is around us that we love? It's birds, people, nature. We're not just limiting it to like the water, limiting it to anything. It's like what's out there, It was really fun coming up with the list. I remember really fun conversations with Roy. Well, what could we do for E? I was like, well, obviously, we do eagle, but like we came up with like, well, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. It's really fun. It's really great. It's like building a big slab of marble, and then we get to take the chisel and just chisel away at it once the marble is there, and you come up with, a statue. That's the best metaphor I can think of for how these books come together,
Yeah.
Cool.
How are we doing, Joseph? We're not boring you yet?
No, yeah, I'm sleeping, but my eyes are open. No, I'm here. I know that for me, from Kwantlen, because we were oral tradition, that so much was lost, and I have really, as a storyteller, I have nothing, because nothing's written in a book for me. And I was wondering, Roy, if when you were a young man, if you were gifted with elders that told stories from your people.
Oh
Best
yeah,
question.
yeah. I have friends too. I'd like a couple upriver from me that when they're young boys, they had stories, and so what I do is I'd listen to their stories, and I use certain characters like Sasquatches. I use quite a bit in my children's stuff, but I wouldn't retell their stories. And I was just wondering if there were some stories that you had that you'd like to share, or teachings from.
Oh my goodness. We all come from oral traditions, and it isn't until we get to school that everything changes. So as a young boy in this ancient village, 5,000-year-old village, I had these old people who never went to school. My grandfather never went to school. He raised 9 children successfully. He was a hunter, fisherman, a trapper. And when you hang around people like that, there was no radio, so no electricity at all. So radios were like pretty rare things in the village. There was one radio. So all of the communication is with our voices. And it's incredible to do this like this with YouTube and have our faces, because we're bringing back these oral traditions. So every time an old person called me over for a cup of tea, want you to come visit, it was because they wanted to share stories. And they had some insight into little Roy and how I was soaking up these stories. And in their telling stories, they were teaching stories to anyone who was willing to listen and to learn. And I'm still listening and learning. I just went back to my village and I heard more stories and I heard some things I'd never heard before. So at the age of 76, I'm still loving stories, other people's stories. Yes, I've been gifted with many storytellers.
And when Roy and I started working on this particular series of books, that was the impetus to doing that, was to try to get these stories to as many people as possible. And when we started doing it, Roy said to me, it's a great idea, but these stories are meant to be heard, you know? And one thing that we made sure we did when we put together these books, I know you could talk a lot about this, but one point I want to make is that this is one link in the chain, but every single copy of the book comes with a link where you can actually listen in the back cover, if I can find it. There's a link where you can listen to Roy telling the story. You need to be able to hear it. And we put together this beautiful book called The Voices from the Skeena, which is an illustrated oral history of the Skeena River based on old recordings from people from the Skeena. So you can hear the stories. To me, there is no other history book on the planet that exists as a three-dimensional book the way that this one does. It is written, it is art, and it is an oral experience where you can listen to the actual people telling the stories. There is no other history book that is so immersive as this book. It took us over 3 years to put together, finding the stories, Roy illustrating the stories, all the things that we try to pack in to try to do our small part in the chain, to continue to bring these stories. It's incredible. It's in such a process, such a learning experience, right?
Yeah, it was that. But when Voices from the Skeena finally came together, it was so very exciting for me, because my whole life has been in and around the Skeena River, and being in Gitxien country, well, that's people of the Skeena. Tsimshian country, well, that's people in the rain. And then Gitxatla, where I'm from, we're actually Gitlahmoan, people of the salt waters. So all of the people's names had something to do with the land where they lived. And so when I was a little boy, well, a teenager in Victoria, I was lost. And I just had a heartache for being back up in the north and back up in the ocean up here. And the BC Provincial Museum, it was called at that time, had a quarterly magazine that came out with an audio tape. And this one summer, one of the articles in that magazine was paddle wheels on the frontier. And I listened to the audio tape, and I heard this man, Imbert Orchard, asking people that I knew questions, and in their voices talking to him, I was again connected to those people that told me stories when I was a kid up here in the North Country. And it was like, I might be lost in the city, but through oral tradition, I'm reconnecting to my childhood, to the teachings. And that's how I met Lucky. I was looking for the tapes, and somebody finally directed me to this guy, Robert. And I said, okay, Robert. So I called him, and Lucky answers the phone, and that's when I started calling him Lucky. And when people say Robert, I'm wondering who they're talking about.
Me too. I still have no idea.
But Lucky was a historian for the BC Provincial Museum at the time, so he listened to all of those tapes.
It took me 4 years to listen to this oral history of our province that was recorded by the CBC in the 60s. The very same tapes that Roy was listening to as a little boy were educating me 40 years later on the history of our province through oral history, which has been the genesis of everything Roy and I have done since, which is bringing the stories back to people. That's the work.
Wow.
Work, and bringing storytelling back into how we teach kids again. I mean, And that's really it. If we can find a way to connect storytelling to how we teach history and how we connect with people, then, I mean, that's literally our mission. So through all these books, and if we can start it as early as, you know, something as simple as, you know, and beautiful as, you know, yellow salmon berries or whatever, then we're starting, then that work is well on its way. Sunset red above the dock. Colors, feelings, what are we seeing? How does it work? How do you put it together? It's exciting to go from that to this. You know, it's really
and
fun.
we could just keep on going for hours. This one story inspires the next story and the next story, and it never ends.
It's really fun.
I know when I teach children, when I the first thing I introduce myself, and then I tell them the Kwantlen people, our story is that 10,000 years ago we fell from the sky and we landed on this island where I live now, and we were told that we were allowed to take the fish, and we've been fishing ever since. And that I look pretty good for being 10,057 years old. Like, really? Yeah. It's mostly face creams and stuff. But, like,
Nice.
are you really 10,000? But yeah.
Nice.
I'm not sure what time we're going till. You said 10:15, eh? Lucky?
I was told 10:15. I'm happy to.
Yeah, it's
Oh, we got 4 more minutes.
4 more minutes. Did you guys have something new coming out after this one, or are you
Hopefully
working on
3 or
something?
4.
Well, we always have something new coming
Nice.
out.
Yeah.
It's right now we're talking about different things, but there's a couple of books that we're thinking about, and one that's definitely coming, and another board book. We never know.
Never know. And then
Nice.
there's also Roy's biography, which has been sitting on the back burner. That's how he and I started working in the first place. In 2011, he called me very end of October to ask me about the recordings that ended up being this book. And I didn't let him get off the phone so fast. I said, hey, man, you know, you had a really interesting life story. Have you ever thought about working on your biography? Remember what you said?
Yeah, I said, oh, I'm not old enough for that stuff yet.
Yeah.
I didn't let him get off the hook. I was really
I
cheeky.
remember what you said.
What did I say?
Excuse me, but respectfully, aren't you collecting your old age pension now? Yeah, yes, I am.
Thank goodness he laughed instead of getting offended. So we started working on Roy's biography, and literally 3 months into working on that project, we got sidetracked with this, Raven Brings the Light, which became the first of like all these other books. We're now, what, 11, 12, 13 and counting or something like that.
Wow.
So that's still on the back burner and, you know, happening in the background, and lots of other ideas of other stories that, you know, we said back when we started working together, if we do this for 30 years, we'll have 30 books. Well, we've now been doing this for 10 years, and I think we're at 11 or 12. So
Wow, that's amazing.
It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. Sometimes working on them simultaneously, like while this was happening, this literally took 3 years. While that was happening, all the while, I think this came out and this came out, and I think Peace Dancer even came out at the time. Like, you know, it's all on the back burner. It's incredible how Roy can keep it together, where there's all these projects and all this art, plus be working as a totem carver, plus be doing storytellings, plus be making art for his art gallery, plus all the other, being a dad and all the other things that he does. It's a lot of oars in the water. Hey, buddy. Exactly. Little gray hairs.
Yeah, we just keep pulling until we're done.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really, really fun. A lot of learning goes into all of it. I'm always inspired by what I learn when I work with Roy, be it a new word or a pronunciation or a way of looking at things. And often it's just slowing down. You know, Lucky, when a First Nations person takes a breath, that doesn't necessarily mean you talk. It's like a tortoise talking to a squirrel, you know, and he's teaching this squirrel to be a little bit.
Yeah, Lucky, you interrupted me there. I'm really sorry. I wasn't finished talking. Oh, okay.
Really, but I'm so excited about what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, we're all teachers, and we are all healers, and we are all visionaries, and we are all leaders. no matter what our age. And it's learning the lessons to be a good teacher, walking through that beautiful door of healing to be close to your emotions so you know what you're feeling, because it helps with the lessons that you learn. And then being able to see with your eyes closed, this vision that we're gifted with is very, very useful, because we can see our path behind us and we can be aware of where we are on the path today. And then as leaders, we know that if we stand in the strength and truth and beauty of who we are, we will be good leaders and lead in a good way.
Nice.
My
Beautiful.
little guy, I'm going to leave you with this because this leads really well to what Rose is talking about. My little guy's in grade 7, and one of the projects he was just given, everyone in grade 7, is to write a biography or something biographical on a teacher of First Nations descent. And one of the people on that list is Roy Henry Vickers, but my son decided not to write about Roy since his dad has written so extensively with and Roy. He's doing it on Chief Dan George. And I think this is a perfect time, Roy, to share. Roy played Chief Dan George's grandson on a few episodes of the CBC show The Beachcombers, and they were friends. And one thing that Chief Dan George taught Roy, I will let Roy say in the Chief Dan George voice, I think is a great way to end based on what you just said, Roy.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I was riding in the bus with him on the way to a beachcomber shoot, sitting beside him, and we spent a lot of time together. He was a good friend of the family and came to visit us a lot. But finally, this one morning, he just looked at me, so I looked at him, and he said, "Roy, when you speak to people, you should speak from your heart, not from your head. If you speak from your head, only their heads will hear you. If you speak from your heart, their hearts will hear you. And hearts never forget." And
Wow.
what he was saying was, Roy, speak from your emotions, not from your intellect. Speak from what moves you. And when you do that, it will move others as well. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Good one. Thanks, Lucky.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I would just like to finish that off by saying that is completely the case in every one of these images. These are all from the heart, which is why children connect with them and why there are so many layers to what is happening in all of these images. It might start as something intellectual. We need to create something that, is kelp, for example. But what ends up happening for Roy is, I was on the boat with my grandpa and my uncle made a set for this kelp beds because he knew in his mind that the salmon would be hiding in the kelp. And so all of a sudden, this emotional connection to the art is so much more poignant and real. And I think that's why kids and everybody resonates with the stories so well, is because it's walking the walk with every image that he makes. Beautiful.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you guys. I'm sure we're going to hook up down the line. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or is that pretty much it? You guys are good?
It was a blast. It went by in 2 seconds for me. So
right?
thank you, Joseph.
Amazing.
Yeah. And we appreciate Word Vancouver for creating this forum and all the sponsors and everything for having us, because it's really, really fun to sit and talk about this.
It's a pleasure, and I just hope that the books continue to open people's minds and teach people about our beautiful province that we live in.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I have no idea how to end this. Like,
high five.
No, I mean technically.
Oh, all right.
Leave studio. Is that? Do we all just leave?
I guess we just do that. Thank you very much.